Thank you, Bruce, for the question. I think that we need a justice system that has to rehabilitate prisoners. I think it's very important for us to have a system where prisoners should be reintegrated into society as productive citizens. I have very much supported many of the measures that the former Prime Minister Harper brought about for the Conservative government, but I think we must change something and we must implement measures for rehabilitation programs as well.
Michael Chong.
Well, thank you for the question. I think we have to do two things. I think the Conservative Party needs to have a credible position to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and I think we need to have a process, a regulatory approval process through the National Energy Board that consults with communities along the routes, that consults with Aboriginal communities along the routes, that takes into account environmental concerns, but that ultimately results in the timely approval of east-west pipelines, such as those like Energy East, which would terminate in St. John. So I actually was visiting the terminus in St. John about 2 months ago to understand exactly the economic impacts it would have on the region. It's projects like this that the government needs to ensure go forward to create jobs in Atlantic Canada and throughout the country.
Thank you. Mr. Rick.
Thank you so much for the question. To help workers, I'm going to do two things. Firstly, I'm going to double the tax credit for employment income. This is going to help families and low-income families, and it will enable us to create jobs throughout the country. And secondly, I want to help our small and medium business sector. They are the very engine of our economic growth here in this country. But the problem is that businesses don't have enough funding to finance and to increase their businesses. So the Central Mortgage and Housing, I'll call upon them to give the business sector more funding so that they may grow.
Well, thank you, Laurie from Nova Scotia, for the question. I'm a fiscal conservative who also believes in democratic reform. I'm also a conservative who believes in the right of social conservatives to express their views on matters of conscience and to vote accordingly, and my record demonstrates that I'm willing to stand up for those rights. I'm also the kid of immigrant parents. One parent who came here from Hong Kong in 1952 as a Chinese immigrant, and another parent who came here from the Netherlands in the 1960s. So I understand the immigrant experience and what it takes to unify conservatives in regions like the GTA. I believe that the way forward for our party is not to focus on divisive social issues, but to come forward with a robust economic agenda to create jobs and economic growth across this country. That's what unifies conservatives. That's the winning formula. That's the formula Mr. Harper used. That's the one I'll use.
Thank you.
Today and for tomorrow as well. Thank you for the question. I think that what's very important here to protect our public health system is to implement a long-term plan for transfers from the federal to the provinces. Under the Harper government, transfers increased by 6% each and every year. And I think that this will enable provinces to plan for the long term. So I think it's very important to have these transfers in health for the long term, predictable, and giving provinces this flexibility that they need to implement changes in the system in their own jurisdiction. I have 3 children, and my wife told me that maybe a 4th, but we already have a dog.
We got a dog instead. That was her decision, and I respect it. To help with our aging population, I think one of the things we should do is to double the working income tax benefit. This was a benefit introduced by Minister Flaherty in 2007. It provides assistance to low-income Canadians and to Canadians working in minimum wage jobs. So if I become leader and if we become government in 2019, we would double the working income tax benefit. This encourages older Canadians to stay in the workforce, encourages those not in the workforce to enter the workforce, and that's one way to deal with our aging demographic.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson.
I feel a little bit of a plan to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, my plan has been reviewed by 4 leading economists at 4 of Canada's leading universities, 2 of them in Alberta, and each of the 4 of them have praised my plan. In fact, Mark Cameron, Prime Minister Harper's former head of policy in the Prime Minister's office, has endorsed my plan. It starts with one of the largest income tax cuts in Canadian history, which we would introduce in our first budget of the spring of 2020. It's a good plan. Check it out at chong.ca.
Well, I'm so delighted. Mr. Chong, is this the last question? No. I believe that businesses do create jobs in Canada, and as a government, we can help businesses to create those jobs and to stimulate growth. As a leader, I will lower corporate taxes and individual taxes. I will also introduce one of the biggest tax cuts ever seen in Canada. That will create jobs, that will create economic growth, and it's more important than ever before because the new U.S. government will be introducing tax cuts as well. My economic plan has been reviewed by 4 university economists, and they applauded the plan.
Well, thanks, Wesley. I'd say that this race is shaping up to be a very clear choice between 2 different visions for the Conservative Party. À l'un côté, nous avons un candidat qui a suggéré que les immigrants sont anti-canadiens.
Immigrants aren't Canadian, anti-Canadian, and they gave examples.
That it's not race-baiting or anti-immigrant, but just yesterday, their campaign was endorsed by a white supremacist group called the Council of European Canadians. We have another candidate who stood idly by while protesters were chanting to lock up the democratically elected Premier of the province of Alberta. À l'autre côté, j'ai une autre
And on
vision.
the other side, well, I have another vision. I want to build a greater
younger Canadians of all races, religions, and creeds from all regions of the country that can win in 2019. Join our campaign at chong.ca.